Hi, this is Morley and this is the M-Wire. Well, there is a lot going on in Russia, folks. Basically, what's happening now is a lot of troop movements, as you can see in this video that I'm showing you now. There is a lot going on publicly and privately behind the scenes as to the conflict and potential invasion of the Ukraine by the Russian Federation. I spoke in my last video about how there was a communications line cut that basically serves Norway and Finland, as well as a mysterious drone flying very close to a nuclear reactor in Sweden. The United States and other countries as well behind the scenes are starting to send more aid and more arms and more equipment to the Ukraine, the UK being one of them. Judging by the actions of the United States and other countries remains very high at this point, as both sides are taking very provocative measures on one another. The United States and other countries in Europe are absolutely convinced that what Russia is doing right now is a pretext for war, in the sense of they are planning some sort of false flag attack. Now, in response to this, other countries such as Canada is sending a special forces unit to the Ukraine, and apparently their mission is to help evacuate diplomats if a conflict should break out in Ukraine. Now, folks, we both know militaries don't exactly divulge what their plans are, because that would be just foolish. So you can almost be assured that they have some other mission, if you will, while they're there. As well, Canada is sending an envoy of diplomats, including Melanie Joly, who is the foreign minister to Ukraine from Canada. So other countries around the world are certainly getting more and more involved in this as we go on, folks. There's a lot of military movement. There's rumors that Russia is taking its troops from the Baltic Sea now and going who knows where with them. So there's a lot going on with this. Germany's top diplomat has said Russia troop buildup hard not to take as a threat. So obviously Germany is very nervous as to what Russia is doing there. All is Eastern Europe, if you want to get down to the heart of the matter, because that's a lot of troops to be built up. So quite understandably, Germany and all these other Eastern countries in Europe are very nervous about the buildup of troops near the Ukrainian border. She did go on to say any further aggression would have a high price. So obviously countries are getting ready to sanction Russia if they take any provocative measures and actually invade Ukraine, or attack Ukraine for that matter. The tone of this meeting is basically that of two leaders saying the last things that they're going to say to each other to try and quell a potential conflict. Because we're getting down to the nitty-gritty with this situation very quickly. Now, I'm going to get into this article out of the BBC, which talks about why Brussels fears Europe is closest to war in decades. But before I do that, thank you for all the comments, folks. I really enjoy them. They help the algorithm. They basically are a no-lose situation. Please keep them coming. They are certainly much appreciated. Europe is now closer to war than it has been since the breakup of former Yugoslavia. Stark words of warning from the senior EU diplomat. I've just been speaking off the record about current tensions with Moscow over its huge military buildup on the border with Ukraine. The mood in Brussels is jumpy. There is real fear that Europe could be spiraling towards the worst security crisis in decades. But angst isn't wholly focused on the prospect of long drawn-out war with Russia over Ukraine. Few here believe Moscow has the military might, never mind the money or popular support back home for that. True, the EU warns the Kremlin of extreme consequences should it take military action in neighboring Ukraine. Germany's new foreign minister Annalena Baerbock was in Kiev and Moscow saying that just on Monday. Sweden moved hundreds of troops over the weekend in its strategically important Gotland Island, which lies in the Baltic Sea, and Denmark strengthened its presence in the region a few days before that. The rising tensions have also reignited the debate in both Finland and Sweden as to whether they should join NATO. But the overarching concern in the West, Washington, NATO, and the UK and the EU is less the possibility of conventional warfare over Ukraine, and far more that Moscow is seeking to divide the Delibus Europe, shaking up the balance of continental power in the Kremlin's favor. Fellow EU countries would say they have now woken up and are smelling very strong coffee. But as it so often is the case when it comes to foreign policy, EU leaders are far from united over which precise course of action to take. Moscow denies, despite the massive buildup of troops on the border with Ukraine, that it's planning a military invasion. But it has issued NATO with a list of security demands, loudly blaming the alliance for undermining regional security. Vladimir Putin insists, among other things, that NATO bans Ukraine and other former Soviet states from ever becoming members of the organization. NATO flatly refused, and the 3 summits held over the last week or so between Russia and Western allies have failed to find much common ground. In addition to that, 3 Russian warships set off on a secret mission to Cuba. They are deliberately parking in the United States' backyard, essentially, to send a message, how do you like it, with nuclear missiles pointed 150 miles at you from your border. So this has caused the United States to respond by sending the Los Angeles-class nuclear attack submarine heading northbound in the Elizabeth River heading to Norfolk, Virginia, in addition to the USS Tripoli America-class amphibious assault ship and USS Annapolis leaving San Diego on today's date as well. Folks, I don't know what's going to happen any more than you do, but I think we are rapidly approaching the point of no return for a major conflict somewhere or a lot of places in this world. But I want to know what you think. Let me know in the comments below. Are we headed to war or are we not? The world is just coming ever more precarious by the day with these provocative measures from both sides. But thank you so much for coming along with me to this update. Please remember to like, to comment, to share, and of course to subscribe. And until the next update, God bless.